Greetings. So, me, this whiteboard, and this friction pen highlighter. We'll go through this. Here's are my notes. It's sort of a reduced version of the Model G profile, and sort of like get it in more clarity. So, in the description is linked the NiTx, it's the INTJ, that's the I.L.I playlist. And in that playlist, you will find 4 in-depth hangouts with Enrique, who has serious INTJ points, I.L.I points, computer programmer, and I'll be referring to him in this, and Spock and Kurt Avon from Blake 7. So, one of the things to notice is this type is a negativist. And even if you've not heard of that dichotomy before, you're probably thinking, yes, I can believe that INTJ is a negativist. So we have the social mission. So this roughly corresponds to Keirsey's idea of role enactment, a sort of a predisposed role. And so we can compare Keirsey's view of INTJ and this one to give an idea of what social mission means in this context. So Keirsey would have the INTJ's best role as the arranger in terms of arranging contingencies and getting the serial operations correct. So you can see there that that is an instance of intuition of time. Serial operations into the future and looking for how things can go wrong. So Ni minus. So there's a matchup there between the two, between Gulenko and Keirsey. This has INTJ, when it's with the TI, it's working together and it's in a structure. And Enrique in the first video gives a very good example of how these two work together for him. I mean, he really is finding errors in other people's code. And so this is so the social role Victor has for this is the critic. Their social mission is the critic. So arguably you could say Enrique is fulfilling that in criticizing other people's code. So the lead function, same as the dominant function in Jung. Creative function, this is a tool used by the INTJ. I'll come back to this later on, but this maximum energy, these tend to be the functions which are overindulged. And then optimum is just used when necessary. So because INTJs don't have that much faith in TI, because overall they're intuitives and sort of go towards a greater truth, and also because they're looking for, and I'll come back to this later, is the subjecting every idea to the test of usefulness. However, once they get into a certain mode, more, I suppose, an internal mode, what I mean by that is, if you think of Enrique with his coder, it's sort of like working within a system. So with the TI plus there, the logic of uniform structure, rather than looking at something that's a little bit more externalized. Even though code really has real life things, it's still very like introverted, I suppose. You can get a lot of bleed over though with TI plus and TE because TI plus is logic of uniform structure, and so I suppose that matches up with INTJ being pedantic. So the creative function, right, and also this type is a process type in socionics. So something about overall about this type, the mindset, this is my term for the Gulenko temperaments because Keirsey owns temperament, in my opinion. Receptive adaptive. So this is the NI and SI DOMs. So these are internally dynamic, externally they seem quite rigid. But not as rigid as SJs, but quite rigid. But internally, it's that weird NI thing going on. That internal perception by means or ways of the unconscious, an unconscious chain of associations where they get that aha moment and it pops into their heads, and sometimes they're able to then think back to work out what was the unconscious chain of associations, the unconscious logic. So the NI and SI DOMs tend to be internally unstable and tend to organize their environment to make them feel better, although that has limits and is more the case with the SI DOMs and the NI DOMs. I'll get on to SI in a moment. Temperament NT. So self-image words in Keirsey: autonomous, ingenious, resolute. Now, resolute is more, in my opinion, for the ideal version of this type. So it's like the super productive and accomplished NTs will have that resolution, whereas other NTs are not quite as resolute, especially the NTPs. But they do have pride in ingenuity and autonomy in terms of, well, very much like the Enneagram Type 5 sense of wanting to think for themselves, being independent thinkers. Right then, so let's put some meat on the bones. So you got intuition of the past. So intuition of the past is a guide to the future. So the NI minus. The other NI DOM, INFJ, NIFX. Oh, by the way, why I call it NITx? Well, you've got two auxiliary functions here. Which one's more important? I mean, when an INTJ is like in their thing, really into something, are they really using TE? They're using the TE more when they come to applying stuff. So, because how can I prove that INTJs use TI? Well, watch them in a discussion with an INTp. They will find all the logical errors. So they're very good at, so they tend to, in my opinion, they tend to use, although Enrique uses it positively in constructing a logical uniform structure in code, they tend to be very good at finding errors in other people's logic. So skeptical of others' hasty initiatives, that in a minus. And again, initiatives going into the future. Oh, what about this? What about if this goes wrong? If this and this and this and this and this. Very careful. Is capable of waiting for the right moment to act. Again, seeing when it will open up. Act strategically based on long-term goals. Well, long-term goals, where are they? They're in the future. So what's part of the future? It's time, intuition of time. There we go. Keirsey. So the way he split the NTJs and the NTPs was NTJ order in terms of serial oppositions into the future. ENTJ was more about hierarchy, but INTJ, the most long-term planner, the serial operation, what the right steps in the right order to achieve the goal. And not just that. The SJs, the STJs can also have long-term planning, but they cannot adapt the plan very well. INTJ will adapt the plan well. And if you see the Kiersey Mastermind profile on Keirsey.com, it will talk about this adaptability of the INTJ Mastermind. So the NTPs are about organization, but not external organization. They're about systems and models. And I can give you an example. A little bit of a digression. You see the way Victor's organized this? Well, let's organize it in a benefit ring, in a supervision ring. So their organization tends to be with systems. And in his school of socionics, we've got integrated here. We've got the charges. We've got the forms of cognition. The way he defines the functions, his mindset system, it's all integrated together. So again, the organization. So we could say with the NTPs, it's the organization of ideas. And with NTJ, sort of the ordering of reality and practical steps to achieve long-term goals. So TI plus, yeah, this has got the logic of uniform structure. So again, this is used as a tool. It's unvalued function, that's why it's in red. Works slowly but conscientiously, paying close attention to detail. Again, conscientiously, looking for things that can go wrong. Because usually when people are acting hastily, they're not looking at the way things can go wrong. Carefully does it. Tries to calculate the possible outcomes in advance. Right. You could say that's NI with TI in that NI is like, okay, what's going to happen? I need to know what's going to happen. The sense of consequence and timing, and the calculation part will be the TI. Tries to calculate possible outcomes in advance while striving to optimize the process within a system and eliminate all the defects. Right. In the NITX's area of expertise can be particularly meticulous and even pedantic. Who'd have thunk it? A pedantic INTJ. So, the idea of social adaptation is that, you know, INTJs don't get to do what they want to do all the while. And sometimes they are presented with, oh no, I have to do something that I cannot use NI and TI with. Oh no, I've got to do some housework or look after myself or engage in relationships with people. So these are not so good. So do these functions. Now, because INTJ rather, I.L.I, is a type which leads with an introverted perceiving function, introverted intuition. It has access to introverted sensing, but not at the same time. So, if you think of some, it's weird. It's like you can have meditative. It's not easy for me to say. Meditative states where you can have like an SI state or an NI state. But if you're thinking about your body and that, you're not really sort of able to have a sort of out-of-body experience and go completely into your mind. Lots of stuff with the unconscious, with NI. Because again, NI is working through the unconscious. That's why you get this thing of where they will say, very frustratingly, I just know. It's not really good enough for the NTPs. They want some reasoning behind it. Now, they can maybe work it out afterwards, INTJs, because they've got that powerful thinking. Right. Work slowly but conscientious. Right. Okay. I'm on the wrong block. Now, I'm going to put a little tick. That one has been done. We're on the third one, SI minus. Sensation of discomfort. So again, overall negativist, just like the first function. They're responsible for practical care of bodily needs such as rest, nourishment, clothing, shelter, etc. Sounds Guardian SJ, that, and it also sounds self-preservation Enneagram instinct. Now, here we go. Here is a key phrase that we usually get with words in this block. Over time, the fact that it gradually develops. It's a bit of a chore. It's a role which has to be performed in order to cope in society. Over time, works out routines to stay healthy. Right, but they're not really into it. It's defensive to stay healthy rather than away from illness, or SI minus, away from the illness, rather than positively towards the health. You get to the same result by different motivation. Might get untidy when stressed, too much effort or little perceived benefit. I added that bit. We go over this with Enrique. It's everything is going through that filter of TE. Everything is going through the filter of usefulness with INTJ. So they're not going to go overboard and be completely OCD with being neat and tidy. They're probably going to go towards being a minimalist. If you see the videos with Haley, where she's in her new place, part of an, both of them are INTJ couple. If you see their place, very cleanly, cleanliness, very good, very stylish. So now we get to the launcher function. This is a very interesting position, the launcher position rather, because it's both very sensitive and not much energy for it. But if you were to ask usually I call this the eyes are bigger than its belly function. So it's like, yes, they really want the FI, the INTJs really want a good, stable relationship. But when it comes down to maintaining that relationship, I've really got a lot of energy for it. You know, say they have a long distance friend, they might forget to like keep up in their correspondence with such a person because they get into that workaholic mode. Not naming any names. So how does ethics, so FI Socionics calls this ethics of relations. So what I was thinking about this, okay, how does Socionics FI work out ethics of relations? What is the mechanism? Well, the mechanism is rapport, and you could almost say that the Western version of FI, subjective feeling, and the ultimate Jungian version is the basis of FI, in that it's based on a subjective feeling of how the relationship is going. So, and that is used to measure subjective distance. And I can sort of prove this sort of difference between this and objective ethics. So if a fan, if an FE fan, FE ego, FE max type fan of a celebrity, they sort of meet the celebrity, they think they have a relationship with them, but as they interact with them, they are going to see the emotions coming off them and realize that they're not quite in as harmony as they think. They really like the person and they meet them, they think they know them, but they're going to read the emotions and they're going to base the relationship based on the FE and the emotionality given off. So they'll pick up on, oh, this person seems to not know me. Oh, that's because he doesn't. Whereas with the FI types, and especially INFP, there's going to be more of that. They base the feeling of the status of the relationship based on how they feel about the relationship. So you could say that if an INFP fan met their idol, then they're more going off the feeling than the actual reading the emotions off the other person. Although having said that, INFPs are very sensitive to tone of voice. So the danger with FI is mixing up one's feelings about a relationship and projecting one's own feelings onto that. So it's more one of these functions where it depends on how sophisticated and nuanced and developed and mature it is. So love the security of a good relationship. Well, you know, like, it's hard for them to get into relationships just because of the way that they are. It's like the good person on the inside with that harsh exterior, because they've not got a lot of time for people. But once you're in with an INTJ, is that they are loyal people. To them, loyalty and competence are the most important things. Love security of a good relationship. We'll do a lot for old friends. And then I'll say here, see what Spock does at the end of Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. I'm not going to spell the ending. Now, then we've got the INFP beneficiary shift. This is something Maria told me about, where sometimes INTJ, when they meet somebody, they will actually tell you about their ethics and their principles. Because again, their FE break, they don't care if everyone around them believes in something. If they think it's silly, they're going to speak up and going to criticize it. And again, it goes back to the critic. So the idea here is they're stimulated by the FI. So, you know, maybe a principle will stimulate. And it was, no, that's silly, we should do it like this. Or they're introverted feeling because they don't have the other kind of feeling is really suppressed, the FE. They don't really care about others. And again, that's part of the NT temperament, autonomous. not focused on others' feelings. So, and oh yes, these are all directed outwards. So, and they have greater scope of use. Now, Dario Nardi wrote something about this, and you can see they're all the same vertness. So within all the introverts have introverted functions in the externalities row. So these are functions with greater scope of use. They're not really situational. With the extroverted functions, their use is situational. So Dario wrote in the back of this book, he wrote, oh, I hope I can get to the bit. Here we go. This was from his published 2005. So here we go. Oh, I might be able to show it on camera. What we got here? Can we see that? There we go. If you pause it, then you can see what's going on. Right. Do more introverted activities overall, particularly the basic ones. So if you look at it, they're not particularly weak at any of these introverted functions. They can get by with the SI stuff and the FI stuff. FE is what they're really weak at. And inflation avoidance. So, self-affirmation block. These are functions which are strong situationally. So, because another thing about INTJ, all the NI and SI DOMs are low energy types. So, people probably think, but especially SITX and NITX, ISTJ and INTJ, they spend their energy very well. So when you see an ISTJ work, they are not going to bust their gut. They work at a slow, leisurely pace. They can be the worker bees, but it's a slow, leisurely, bureaucratic pace. They are not busting a gut. I mean, the SPs like to bust the guts. One of the things of leaving it to the last moment in order to have the challenge there. So, frugal, T minus, logical savings. Haley used to talk about her sub $10 clothes. That's also like an Enneagram 5 trait. There's the stinginess, and also stingy with the time as well. And then I'll put here from Kiersey, from the Kiersey Mastermind profile. Every idea is subjected to the test of usefulness. So, how about this? Now you've got this launching this, the FI with the NI, and then you've got the NE launching the T. Ideas, ideas, ideas. Oh, it's not useful. All right, then I'll ignore it. And so there's not much that gets through the bar of usefulness. So there might be loads of good ideas that they just ignore, or it conflicts with their master plan. Yeah, that's a good idea. I'll tell somebody else about it, but I'm sticking to the plan. Or I'm sticking to the goal and they can adapt the plan rather. So, can show surprising level of skill or expertise. Yes, Jeff's dad, INTJ, PhD in computer science, worked for Westinghouse. Jeff's dad, prize-winning bass fisherman. Supervisor shift, right. So what here? Make good small-scale supervisors. Again, oh, look what the type's in there. TESE, ESTJ. So small-scale supervisor on its territory with situationally narrow scope of use. So, whereas they're not as likely to do what ESTJ comes in and says, what are all you buggers doing? Get yourself organized. You do this and you do that and you do this. Right. Power sensing of resistance. Again, what will come through here is the situational use of this and how it develops and how it can develop. Power sensing of resistance, not subordination. So more, this is exemplified by ESFP. ESFP is not really throwing their weight around. You know, ESFP wants to, you know, have fun and be seductive. And resist people controlling them. ESTP is more about subordination and like showing where they are in the hierarchy and the pecking order. Right. May yield to direct force at first. But here's that thing again. Over time, but over time acquires confidence, learns the game, and becomes capable of using force when needed. When needed, again, situational. Not afraid of confrontation within their close circle. Again, situational. Got to look for these little clues in Victor's writing because it's very deductive. It's like the system is determining what's written in there. Can seize the moments by noticing and putting to use the resources made available by the circumstances. Right. Seize the moments. Yeah, that's a bit SE. Noticing and putting to use the resources, again, TE, made available by the circumstances. So yeah, very much TE with SE. And so you can see how that is situational. They're in that extroverted mode. Usually they don't have energy for this sort of thing. But if it's usefulness, if it's useful, it passes the test of usefulness, then they can act. But they've got limited energy because they like to do the NI thing and meditate. We'll go into that introverting. So we are on self-affirmation block, supervisee shift, because ESTJs is a supervisee. INTJs have got a little bit of a psychological edge over ESTJs. Because, you know, ESTJs like to plan, but they're rigid in their planning. But INTJs can come along and go, well, but what about this and what about that? Oh, very good, INTJ. So now we've got the inflation avoidance block. Weakest two functions. Well, this certainly is the weakest, FE. This one's weakest in terms of energy, but in terms of information, very high. I'll get onto that later. So, I'll just tick these. That one's done, and that one's done. So, weakest at FE. Oh, yes. She's got FE minus there, but really what it's weakest at is FE plus. Positive emotionality. Now, in Kiersey, the hardest thing for an INTJ to do would be to be like a host. The hostess role, best played by sort of hostess role, best played by ESFJ. And FE is defined here as a function which shapes demonstrative and expressive behavior. So they're really weakest at FE plus. Not very good at showing positive emotion. And when they do show strong emotion, it tends to be negative. Right. Prone to criticize, ruining the atmosphere and or their own mood. Again, criticize, a negative emotion. Poor masters of their emotions. And then I've put here they need Vulcan training. This is the idea of the Vulcans in Star Trek. Now, really, this shouldn't have been called the Vulcans because that's from our mythology. So why would an alien species have a name from our mythology? Poor masters of their emotions. They need the Vulcan training to control their emotions. May fluctuate randomly from calm to melancholy to aggressive discontent. This is what happens when the Vulcans have not, got their training and their emotions under control. And that's one of the things there. This is why the Vulcans are a fantastic metaphor for the INTJ. From the outside, they've got that reduced emotional affect, and they're using logic to try and tamp down their very strong emotions. Kiersey, I'll remember this now. In the Kiersey profile, he talks about the INTJ being a closet romantic, and that he writes they do not show a lot of emotion. They've got the poker face, but inside they are the closet romantic. So Kiersey was describing the right type. So, lack of facial expression and intonation, and then I've put here blink and you miss it smiles and Spock's eyebrow. That was like where he got a lot of expression. Spock's eyebrow. Now I have jokes about this with Haley, where she smiles, it does not last long. Right, the dialogue from Blake 7. Oh, how is this relevant? You're so self-indulgent, Ben. Yes, it is relevant because it's a particular story, and Avon was very INTJ, especially in the first two seasons when the actor had more discipline. So, hopefully you can see this. Aha! Right. Blake is sitting there, so I'll do the Avon voice. Blake is sitting up in a tree, Travis is sitting up in another tree. Unless they're planning to throw nuts at one another, I don't see much of a fight developing before it gets light. And then Gan, probably ESFJ Gan. Never involved, are you, Avon? You ever cared for anybody? And then Villa, except yourself. So again, because he's not showing it. And then Enrique really connected with this. I've never understood why it should be necessary to become irrational in order to prove that you care. Or indeed, why it should be necessary to prove it at all. An insult, or did I miss something? And then Cali, INFP, you missed something. Right, there we go. So, did I do the... Now we're on to the interesting one of the control function. So it has all these ideas, but ignores them. You're probably thinking, Ben, why did he ignore the ideas? Well, they've got their plan, haven't they? And they've got low energy. So they have these ideas, well, I could go over there and do this thing and that thing, but it goes off the plan. It's a digression. Now, the NP is they do this and they end up not getting plan A done because they get distracted by more interesting plans. So I'll go through these bullet points and then we'll illustrate this. High information for possibilities, but doesn't act on them because they conflict with the overall plan, and having high standards for all of these ideas must pass the test of usefulness. Will there be money involved? Will there be practical results? Knows which ideas are promising, and those ideas have to pass a high bar. Follows the cutting edge of what they're interested in. Yeah, because they're interested in technology and science, the STEM subjects usually. Although they can be interested in other things. Interesting example of an NiTx resembler. Brian May, Dr. Brian May. He was doing his PhD, but he got interrupted. Then he became, a fantastic guitarist with the rock group Queen, and he went back to it and he finished his PhD because nobody else had done research in that area at the time. So his now is Dr. Brian May. Reduced emotional affect, even looks like fellow INTJ Newton. Other INTJs, I think that Jordan Peterson resembles INTJ. I think that did I mention Newton? Yeah, Newton and Brian May look very similar. Yeah. Right then. Keirsey thinks that Eisenhower was INTJ because of his lots of detailed planning, although that may have been through development. Follows cutting edge STEM subjects. Oh yes, Gamma Quadra. So again, these valued ones in green. So you've got SFPs and NTJs. Follows the cutting edge. Okay, here we go. And then I can prove this bit here. Can support others in developing their full potential, but for itself, NiTx may lack motivation, energy, or self-confidence to do it. Again, it's a low energy type. And so they want to spend their energy very wisely. So a little bit like an E5 theme of being stingy with time. So I mentioned Enrique there. Somebody wanted to get into, a friend of his wanting to get into coding. And so in typical Enrique fashion, he said to his friend, there's an algorithm for that. You got to do this, this, and this. Read these books and this. And so he was helping him, but in a very INTJ-ish way. Right, and then here we go. And this sort of sums it up about the NE plus in INTJ. May advise others about promising ideas or fields, whilst not willing to take the risk itself. So too risky, because they see the risks. They see where things can go wrong. The contingency planner. So I will climax with the vastly underrated Dr. David Kiersey. Let's have a look in this book. Right then, little bits. What we've got: order and organization. Here we go. NCJ is, there we go. NI in purple. So we're seeing the behavior there. Serial order. And then the NTPs are about, and then I did a little diagram at the top, which cannot be seen, but these are the role variants with it. But what else have we got? We've got the profile at the end of that chapter. What have we got here? So we've got planning operations, masterminds, contingency planning, or what is called entailment management. A contingency plan as if-thens in it. Put there to deal with foreseeable operational errors. Foreseeable operational errors. And shortages of personnel and material, because he was doing this in relation to So this very much is the NI with the TE, because he's thinking about Mastermind INTJs in World War II. Keirsey Senior was part of World War II, so it's like contingency planning in a practical context. So NI with TE. Right, so what have we got here? Lots of TE stuff. Only accept ideas if they're useful. If they can be theoretical models can be translated into actuality. I'm going to put an extra bit of light on this. Right, other things, practical. NI.5. Single-minded at times, focusing tightly on their own pursuits so they can ignore the points of view of others. Right, they're being focused. Here's the stuff about FE break, and I'm going to have to improvise. I can be adaptable too, and I'm going to show this. So, you see that there? FE break stuff. And then you go closet romantic stuff. Deeply emotional, even romantic types. Deeply emotional. And again, there's a bit here about they want their mate, not a submissive mate. So that fits with the romance style. You know, that they want like a woman or a man with spirit. Unemotional, cold, dispassionate. Others may describe them as that. Indifference or criticism from. So you can see that you Socionics Model A's, he is not describing I.L.I. He is describing I.L.I. Every idea is subjected to the test of usefulness. There we go. So that's the climax. Me putting the camera on wonky. Right then. So if you go to the search box, and although this is going to go to the INTJ playlist, yes, first line in the description box. There we go. So it is now. There we go. Bye bye.